I started in Parliament when I was senator, the 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling fight. And I want to declare that that fight cannot be lost. And this is our time to ensure that we pick it up as the people of Mount Kenya region.
Never allow anybody to discuss your boss with you. Usikubali. Because the minute you allow people to get into conversation to discuss your boss, you have lost it.
Let us have respect for our president as our leader. It is the agenda that he sold to the people of Kenya that won the election.
Kumwombea Mheshimiwa William Ruto awe rais si ngoma. Ngoma ni kumwombea Mheshimiwa rais atekeleze baada amekuwa rais wetu.
When William Ruto was deputy president, he had a difficult time. Alinyimwa magari, hakuwa na magari. Petroli alikuwa anaweka mwenyewe. Nyumba yake ilikuwa inanyesha. Chai alikuwa anatoa mfuko. Ndege anakoboa yake. Hakuna waziri anaweza chukua simu yake.
Yale mawimbi ambayo yanamkumba wakati ni rais ni mazito kushinda yale mawimbi ambayo alikuwa anapigana nayo wakati anatafuta hii kiti.
I have no choice but to succeed by helping him to succeed. And that is what deputies must do.
We have a problem. And as leaders, the best we can do is to pray to God to give us the wisdom and the fortitude to be able to confront all our challenges truthfully.
And I want to urge my colleagues all the way from Tharaka Nithi, all the way down through all our counties, up to here in Kiambu, where we border Nairobi, that we will never be forgiven by generations if we use this opportunity to promote interboundary and personal conflicts. That instead of joining together to change this country and to change this region, that we waste and squander the opportunity and fail to deliver on the vision and the wishes of our people.
Shida kubwa tulio nayo Kenya, hatutaki kugoja. Tunataka kila kitu haraka haraka. Uoe leo upate mtoto leo. Ahadi zote either ni za Mungu au ni za serikali, ni rais aliweka, dawa yake goja.
In Kenya, there is a concept called kingpin, and there is a contest for kingpins around Kenya. Different regions have different kingpins.
Kingpin ofisi yake iko wapi? Mshahara yake ni ngapi? So if there are people who want to that office, I'm not part of it because maybe I'm deputy president. My office is in Harambee House, na ingine iko Karen, and there is a salary, and there is a job to do. I am the principal assistant to the president. I have no time for that kingship nonsense. Sina hiyo time because mimi niko busy. I'm too busy that I can hardly cope.
Wananchi, as we speak, let us concentrate on core issues kama railway, city, hospitali, hii yote. Hii ya kingpin, msiende kuambia kiongozi kuja hapa tukupange ukue kingpin, kuja tukupange ukue hii, kuja tukupange ukue hii. We will be wasting a lot of time, and then William will exit and we cry, and we may cry longer this time.
Nina imani yule Mungu alionifanya niwe gavana ndiye Mungu atakayehakikisha ya kuwa yale matakwa ya watu wa Mombasa yataweza kukamilishwa.
Tumekubaliana hakuna port itabinafsishwa ama itafanywa kuwa private ya watu fulani. Yale mpango ya zamani ya privatization na kubinafsisha port haitafanyika chini ya uongozi ya serikali mimi naongoza.
Just imagine now we are crying of floods, water. The next 3 months, no water. That is the situation, and the government of Kenya, His Excellency the President and the Ministry of Water, they should look at ways and means of harvesting this water.
While rains have successfully alleviated our water scarcity, they have also unleashed devastating floods that have brought sorrow and hardship. As of today, more than 12,000 households has currently affected by these devastating floods, and approximately 4,000 households have been displaced from their homes.
Whatever happened and the briefing that was given to His Excellency the President, we don't know. Later the President made a statement saying, we are grateful to God that El Nino situation that was forecasted is no more. However, we are here to make a very firm statement that the situation as it is in these counties are worse than the 1997 El Nino period.
All right, just looking at the Standard today as well, where we have Dennis Kabara, who has written a piece there, which is why Ruto's tax everything that moves approach is bound to fail, while Ruto's tax everything that moves approach is bound to fail. And I like what he says at some point. He says it doesn't matter how often the Ruto administration brushes off the cost of living debate with their coined language of we are subsidizing production, not consumption. We are growing maize. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics Consumer Price Index shows that inflation is falling, and the other jazz Kenyans say belong to Java. The fact of the matter is this debate is an existential one, and it is political as it is economic. In truth, Azimio's Mandamano has prefaced our future electoral choices, not by better ideas, but by feeling quite early in the day, this Kenya Kwanza administration's tone deaf, we are smarter than you language. And then it says, for the everyday Kenyan, if I just try and zoom in a bit, they say for everyday Kenyan, the daily combo of future promises and we are fixing the past, defined as Uhuru's Jubilee administration, is long past its sell-by date. The everyday Kenyan is fed up watching YouTube and TikTok clips of beautiful motorcades and frequent flyer pics of leaders escaping a country where many struggles to get home with enough to provide a meal for their kids. And this is what we're hearing even from the soapbox, that we're trying to fix the past. In Uhuru's administration, things were happening. Oh, it was pilfered. We had empty coffers. So he says this is long past sell itself by date excuse that we should be using. And we just wanted to comment on that. And I know you wanted to comment briefly also on the ports as well. But this is opening up a whole debate on many facets of issues that we should put on the table. Looking at the kingships that we are talking about that is coming to the fore. We have Azimio right now fronting Kalonzo Musyoka as the presidential candidate of 2022. That is part of the kingpins that they're talking about as well. But you want to just react on that, or maybe go straight to the ports?
Thank you, Dibal. Let me go straight to the port, then I come back to this because
so that I believe it's handover as well.
Yes. I've listened to my brother Mheshimiwa about the issue on privatization. And we have had this conversation before. Remember, there was a time when the news went around that there is a law that has been put in place that was being debated in Parliament, will be passed, that will take away Parliament from being involved in privatization process. And I believe later on a clarification was made to the effect that there is no way such a very important aspect of government policy and legislation could be taken away from the power of the person who represents the people. And indeed it's true that that particular act, the Privatization Act, still has retained in section 22 of its provision the mandate as the last person to give green light to any such intended privatization is Parliament. That one has provided the public, the people of Kenya, with the last mandate to decide whether or not to privatize. And so it is not, as it had earlier on been said, that there will be no involvement of the people or of the Parliament. That is not given. The law is in place, it's still in Parliament, and there is a provision, there is a requirement that Parliament must give the last say in decision making with regards to whether to privatize or not. That alone is now where we are protecting the public and the interest of the public and the interest of Kenya.
Even in light of the passing of the privatization bill that we have it as an act right now?
I'm saying yes. I'm saying that is not what had earlier on been, but that there is no requirement, there is no role Parliament will play in approving. Remember, that was the conversation where we were saying Parliament has been stripped of the right to veto or approve any privatization.
But isn't that the
case? It is not.
Why not?
It is not. Look at section 22 of that particular bill. We can have that conversation at length, where it says, once all is said and done, it is Parliament that will give the last approval of any such intent, privatization. That one is there. That is with regard to the law as it is being processed. With the Port of Mombasa, I've had a bit of inquiry about it as well, because it generated a lot of conversation when our colleagues from Mombasa say we cannot allow this to happen. When you look at the best practices, the Durban port in South Africa, the Jebel Ali port in Dubai, the ones which are doing very well in the world in terms of economic zones for their own people, income generation, source of employment, and also the performance in terms of service delivery to not only the people of Dubai or South Africa, but the world, because that's actually an area where it's attracting a lot of investments and a lot of business in terms of port services. The practice is what we are looking at in Kenya, concession, where in South Africa, for instance, I think the company that is running is partly owned by the government of South Africa and Philippines. They are doing very well. In Dubai, the same thing. Everyone else, we all know. We all run to Dubai for purposes of best practices. So as it's been confirmed, there is no privatization of the port. But we are looking at a concession in terms of best practice in management to ensure that we have the best services to the people and have that port of Mombasa compete in the region, so that we don't lose to South Africa and to Tanzania, where they are building very fast in terms of turnaround time for service delivery, cost and related challenges that you would have. That is the direction we are going, and the President has confirmed to the nation that there's nothing called port privatization. And I believe we should, as we have all along said, look, when we have this public conversation about it, it helps Kenyans to understand. Unlike what previously had happened, where we all got to know from the papers that there was already a portion of the port that had already been sold or something like that, which later on, of course, became part of the conversation that we are clearing as at now. That is with regards to the issue of the port. Back to this other conversation.
I just want to get clarification of the Privatization Act as it is right now. Does the Parliament still have the preserve or that particular mandate of approval as far as this Privatization Act is concerned?
Actually, two things have happened.
Yes.
The earlier proposal was to some extent reducing the powers of Parliament. But when the committee, when the bill went through the committee stage, public participation, two things happened. The role of Parliament was strengthened, so nothing will be done without the involvement of Parliament. The other thing which happened is also important. Those parastatals which had been scheduled for privatization before the bill became Act of Parliament, the process is going to start again.
Okay.
So we are going to start afresh. So in terms of procedure, I don't think we have any problem as Kenya. We have nothing to worry. The law is now very clear on what needs to be done. Parliament will be playing a major role. And as I said earlier, our committee will now be also keen in terms of oversighting the process. And let me put this into context, Dubao. When you look at this country, we have more than 300 parastatals. These parastatals you can categorize into about three categories. One of them, there are those who serve social interests. And those ones, you don't expect any returns from them. There are others which are supposed to be government investments, so that when they operate, they are supposed to be giving dividends back to the government, either in terms of profit, so that at the end of the day you expect a check coming from them to treasury, because they are government investments. And then there is that category, the likes of central bank, which are more regulatory, which provide regulatory services. And those ones, we don't expect any returns from them. So the government must invest in them to provide that regulatory framework. Now, our concern as a country has always been the public ones, the public investment parastatals, who have been draining a lot of resources from the consolidated fund, but giving minimal returns. So the issue of privatization is nothing wrong with it. We are saying it is something which should go on more so for the public investment parastatals. And we are saying any which is not making money should be dissolved, so that at the end of the day, we don't have people who are being paid salaries, we don't have recurrent expenditure, and then government makes nothing out of it. And that's, to me, I was saying, the issue of Mombasa, what we are saying is, the whole idea of privatization, currently, it is reported that they are collecting 20 billion in a year. If we go through this process and we succeed to get 120 billion in a year, then it means we are improving the income. And I see a situation where even the local people of Mombasa are likely to get more in terms of their share to be retained at that local level. It's not that we are against it. We are just saying that let the people be told the truth, that we are handing over this to private investors so that we generate more revenue through the port, which will be shared at the national level and at the county level. So the county is likely even to get a higher share in terms of money than they are getting when we are generating only 20%.
How open then are these negotiations as well? Because we've seen Daily is flashing some of the negotiations have already been made or deals have already been made. There was no public participation, one of which is, as you're saying, is the Emirati company that bought shares of Telecom Kenya, and you know that was still under the probe of the committee in Parliament. Even barely when that particular report had been tabled, there was a deal that had been made. So I wanted just to ask again before we continue. Does that also take into account that particular deal that was made with the Emirati company, right? ECAS, regarding also the buyback shares that was brought from Helios and it was taken by the Emirati company? Does that consider, because you say all those...
Yeah, what the law has said, that one I have no specific details, but what the law has said, and this was said very clearly by the chair of the committee, is that any scheduled privatization before the law, the bill became an act of parliament, will have to be reviewed again. So I'm imagining even that will be part of the review, so that we see, did it factor in the interest of the country as a public participation? Because public participation brought out a number of issues which had to be factored into the bill. So I think what will be happening is even that should be subjected to the whole process to see whether it meets the criteria set out in the law. And if it doesn't, then it might be able to exceed. But generally, we did agree as Parliament that we are going to start afresh, that even things like Mumias, who had been scheduled to be sorted out, we'll have to start again. That now the Privatization Commission, which is in the Treasury, will have to resubmit afresh details of which parastatals are earmarked for privatization. And on the basis of now the analysis, in line with the new law, then we see whether they meet that criteria for privatization or they don't. If they don't, then it means they will not be privatized. The other issue which was coming also out, which is clear, is the issue of the property. Most of these parastatals have a lot of property attached to them, more so land and other fixed immobile assets. And what is going to happen, the question was, even as you privatize this land, and this is a question which is even with our deliver here, the question of the land which is there, and maybe it was donated by the local community, is it part of the parastatal when you are privatizing? And these are the questions which now will have to be looked at into details by the committees and also by the technical team in Treasury, so that by the time we make a decision privatize, we are sure of what we are doing as a country.
Dibal, where I come from, they say the moat was mine. Before the interjection, I was on a response to that element of privatization, and what Honorable Kali has said has cleared the issue with regards to the Privatization Act. I believe going forward now, we will be able to have a conversation which is confined to the lower seas now in terms of way forward in privatization. You've asked the question as to what could be the status. I'm not privy to the details as to the process of the port ongoings, but it's true that when this law is in place, anything that will be done as regards concessions or privatization of public entities must comply with that law. We have members of parliament, we have the executive who appreciates the fact that if there is a procedure that has been laid out in law, it must be followed. And remember, Kenyans are litigious, and one of the things that the president over time has said is that if and when there is anything that the law provides a procedure, we must do that procedure because it doesn't cost anything to ensure that we follow the law. So I'm sure in the fullness of time, any such intended privatization or concession of public entities, that law will guide the process up to its completion. And I have faith in the implementation by the relevant committees in the two houses of parliament, and even inquiries as to why such has not been complied with. The second link of what you asked me when I began this is about the history of why is it that we are talking about we inherited a government that had empty coffers, that had this and that.
I think we don't want to actually delve into that particular
actually
debate.
don't want, in fact, I wanted to tell you that Dibal, I wanted to say that, you know, history defines the future, and sometimes when you delve into it so much, you forget how to craft that future. And so, going forward, listening to everyone having a conversation on what we are supposed to do, we would rather not delve so much into that past, but don't forget the fact that it should guide what we do as a government, what we do as leaders from the time we got the opportunity to lead.
But Kenyans are tired of actually just listening, oh, you know, it was the president, oh, it was the coffers. I think it's been 2 years down the line right now.
No, 1 year, not 2 years.
No, we are getting into 2 years as it is right now. Yeah,
it's 1 year, and I'm saying it is not an excuse.
Yes,
it's not an excuse, and it can never be an excuse for performing.
And we're hearing the same narrative from the deputy president. So that's what we're saying. Could we just move on and say what is the future? I wanted just to ask, especially in light of what we have on the front page of a Business Daily, and I come to you, Sosion, on that particular note. When we talk about the plan, and we have such a heading, layoffs rise to COVID levels on higher taxes and fuel cost, and we have the Kenyan's unemployment crisis deepening further in October after companies cut jobs at the rate last witnessed at the peak of COVID-19 pandemic, when businesses resorted to layoffs, salary reductions, and unpaid leaves to stay afloat. And these are findings of Stanbic Bank's Kenya's Purchasing Managers Index, based on feedback from about 400 corporate managers, that is suggesting the job cuts were in response to flagging sales, which prompted a further downscaling of output levels. So you will say we're still smack dab in the middle of the plan, from your own assessment? Are we speaking reality?
In statistics, there is what you call a curve. You draw a curve and you connect the dots. And when you connect the dots, then you can do and draw the curve. So really, you cannot look at one segment of data where you do your plotting. You must correlate the entire set of it. The economy is not.
What about if you talk about 45% of foreign investors fleeing the Nairobi security?
The economy is not emanating from the blues. It's emanating from a background and is projecting into your future. And I think what is being reported probably could be the situation as it obtains at the moment, the complications and challenges that exist as of now. But in terms of the plan, and we've discussed over time again, the investment program in this country from the previous government focused more in the capital investment, and it never focused in the production. And in the production sector, of course, when you talk of cartels would like to evade taxes, do things with ease, avoid tax payments, and they want free labor, low-cost labor. That is why when you see the private sector and the investors are very jittery about any new taxation, any new imposition of levies like enhanced NSSF deduction, housing levies, which are social benefits to workers. Nobody's talking about the social benefits to workers. And you see, if they're reacting and saying, no, we are going to downsize the workers so that they can make huge profits, that's a mistake. Kenya remains a viable, profitable business destination. That's a fact. However much that narrative is being bandied around, Kenya Kwanza government is very deliberate in focusing on the production sector of the economy. And it's not a production sector for results in 2032. It's production sector for results within a short, viable period of time. We've been discussing about the cost. That is part of the wider, the port operation. That is part of the wider program of the plan. And we've seen narratives on taxation trying to be very negative. There is no shortcut. We must strengthen tax collection system in this country. And I said, when you are drawing a curve, consider several points of plots. When Moi retired, the tax collection level in this country was 250 billion, with a domestic debt of 62 billion. When Kibaki retired, the tax collection system had been strengthened to 1 trillion, with the domestic and external debts total of 1.7 trillion shillings. And when Uhuru retired, the total domestic tax collection was at 2.1 trillion, with a domestic and external debts of 9.2 trillion, which needs to be serviced. And this is where this tax collection and repayment of loans come in. And Ruto administration focuses to strengthen tax collection and raise it to at least 4 trillion, so that then the country can continue with the capital investment development program, like building of roads and expanding the standard gauge railway, while at the same time injecting resources to the production sector of the economy. And the economy itself will adjust itself. Those who want free havens where there are no taxes to invest, it's a different thing. But those who want to comply with the provision of the law, provision of the taxation regimes that are provided by law in this country, and continue doing business, because Kenya remains a very competitive destination, can still do it. It has come a time that the tax evaders, the big boys, must be dealt with, and everybody must pay taxes. So with all these narratives, the political narratives trying to paint a negative picture on what is happening, it is not exactly what is happening. And we saw the tax conference, the KRA tax conference in Mombasa, and the president was very clear. And the thing is, nobody is going to be harassed. Can we deal? Can we play within the law, ensure we collect taxes and deliver services? From the labor sector aftershock of COVID, of course, there was a general agreement during COVID. And at that time, I was still in the labor movement, that probably the employers can freeze further new recruitment, and employers can freeze further CBA negotiation for that time as an interim measure. But now they cannot use the new tax regimes in government, and where they feel they're not making exponential profits like they were doing. They must also know, all investors, that they have social corporate responsibility to sustain workers in employment, pay for their social protection programs like healthcare, like savings within NSSF and others which have been introduced, including housing, is part of the wider economic plan of the country, because in the long run, the return from these investments will still benefit the business entities. So that's a complex issue that we cannot just through a headline begin wishing away and saying the plan is dead. The plan is on course, and the plan is based on 5 pillars. Number 1 is revamping agriculture. Agriculture is a major production sector, and we have seen tea farmers getting more enhanced pay. We have seen coffee farmers and even global coffee buyers coming to Nyeri to buy coffee. That's good news for our export crop that gives us foreign exchange. We are seeing the tea industry, the push out of cartels, and the order of the president of 3 conditions of either going to jail, leaving the country, and going to heaven. That's a stern warning to revive to the cartels so that the industry can be revived. There are many programs in the agricultural sector, including development of the aggregation zones in the 47 countries. The Hustler Fund program is ongoing for the small, medium enterprises. There are a lot of work in the ICT sector, which is the general infrastructure that will enable business and enable many things to be done. And we've seen several agreements that the president has brokered both in the US and other parts of the world to promote the infrastructure, ICT infrastructure in the country. The housing plan is on course, And of course, the latest, the rollout of the universal health care and the passage of 4 bills which are now acts of parliament that focuses on the strengthening the primary health care, the social health insurance scheme, and that is and of course strengthening the healthcare facilities and very many others. And so these are programs that are falling in place. And in fact, if we look at the success of the plan away from the pillars, when you look at education, employment of 56,000 teachers, that is no mean achievement.
All right,
and several other programs that have been put in place in the education sector, including implementation of the funding model and ensuring that education remains equitable, accessible, and of good quality to all Kenyans. These are major achievements, and I'm sure they'll become clearer and clearer as we move from one financial year to the other. And Dibal, the president was sworn in on 13th of September 2022. Today is early November 2023. It's 1 year, 2 months. Let us be precise in talk about time. So when you exaggerate to 2 years,
I say it's going to 2 years now.
Yes, it's 1 year. It's 1 year, 2 months. And the plan is falling in place systematically.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Allow me to butt in and just rope in Honorable Mgatano on this. You can see also what we had in the dailies as well. And this was a comment that was coming from the control of budgets, that we have 2 billion shilling salary heist. And she says she cannot tell where the money goes after it is moved from what was originally budgeted. I have put before you data for you to believe that there is such a term, budget or budgeted corruption. And this is, she says in a candid interview with the Saturday Nation's control of budget, Margaret Nyakango, has laid bare the extent of an apparent scam involving inflation of salaries of top state officers. The clearest case yet of budgeted corruption, Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u has referred the complaint to the Auditor General. And this is, you're talking about taxation, and I want to just also to show this, if my director may pick up this. We stop harassing taxpayers, Ruto orders KRA, and I think this is a circle back to where we had that last week, and I think it was a matter on the also on the floor of the Senate, the way KRA are harassing tourists at JKIA.
I think
so. All this money that he's saying that we collect from taxes, and we need to revamp our tax regime, and we have a heist that is actually being happening, 2 billion shillings being lost through budgeted corruption.
I think
are we just batting our heads on the wall?
No, I think first of all, I just wanted to make this note that in as much as we have some very horrible officers within the government structure, we also have some very outstanding officers like Margaret, who through media, the Fourth Estate playing its role, are able to expose facts as they are. Now, we say in our language that when you make the wound, you expose the wound, you expose the disease, you're able then to get the treatment. So I'm glad to hear that Professor Njuguna Ndung'u has referred that complaint to the relevant authority so that the investigations can be done, and those who are culpable, arrests will be done, and the law will follow its course. I pray that that actually happens, and I pray that even our colleagues in the opposition will not let this story lie down. Because sometimes people see the problem, and then they highlight it, talk about it for a while, then they let it go. So I think we need to have a very systematic way of dealing with problems as they come. But the systems are such that with time we improve. America didn't get to where it is. Europe didn't get to where it is without the various stakeholders playing their role. And I want to congratulate honest public officers who are doing their job I congratulate the media for exposing these things when it's good for our society. I pray the opposition will get to work also, get out of the quagmire they are in, because right now you don't hear any serious engagement on the political front. In fact, a statement like that one of the public officer, like the Auditor General, I would have really ran out with it if I was in the opposition, because that is the role they are supposed to play. So my belief is that with time, we will weed out the wrong guys and bring in the correct people. On the harassment of the people who are coming in the country, I think that was very wrong, and I'm glad we debated it in the Senate, and I believe that action has now been taken, because the president also picked it up when he was in Mombasa for the tax conference. I think it's really horrible. I don't know why people don't see what I see. Imagine you are coming with your family, and you've left wherever you are coming from. You've arrived at the airport, and someone tells you you have to pay on your watch, or your shoes, or your shirt,
or your telephone,
or the wig your wife is wearing. It is just horrible. It is just horrible. Not just coming from outside Kenya, but even when you are going to Mombasa, sometimes you pay a package in the holidays which says it is full board, and you're not carrying any money really, and you are wearing your shorts, your kofia, your goggles, you're relaxed. The last thing in your mind is work and money, and what you want to go there for 1 week and run in the beach, roll in the sand with the little kids. And then someone stops you at the airport and tells your wife, no, that chain, I think it's more than $500. You need to pay taxes. You have no single coin in your pocket. Then when you ask them, okay, can we run a card? No. We don't have cards here. You have to look for money. How? It is just horrible. Sometimes you have to put a human face, even when you are executing your duty as an officer in the government. I think these people, they are not doing what the vision we have is. You have to respect taxpayers, and I think the president has said this many times. Respect the taxpayers so that you are able to deal with the issue of collection. Convince me to pay, and I will pay what is due. But don't come and fight me. I'm going for a holiday, and then you stop me at the airport, or I'm crossing the border, you stop me there and tell me you pay or go back. What is that? It is a very annoying thing, and I think people need to be humane. And if that must be implemented, there must be a lot of social awareness, advertisement and things like that, so that people know. So I really want to say that this kind of measures that don't seem to respect the taxpayers, they must be removed, so that we can go together in this dream of let us also pay for the services, so that the country can make a step forward. That's what I would have to say.
All right, thank you. Let's hear just briefly from you. Or maybe the CS tourism will actually, the CS tourism will have spoken to it, because tourists have been affected by this. Just because then we'll hear from Wilson
It's
Sossion.
true, when we get information like what the Comptroller of Budget gives us, 2 billion shillings, which you can't account for. It reminds me of what the former President Uhuru says: we lose 2 billion Kenya shillings every day to nowhere, because he couldn't explain where that 2 billion goes. But I also allowed the action that and the acceptance of the allegation by the CS Treasury that if indeed this is something that has been picked by the Comptroller of Budget, then it behoves the office of the CS Treasury to look through, investigate, make an inquiry, and establish the truthfulness or otherwise of such an allegation, because 2 billion Kenya shillings being an inflated amount, as it's reported, to salaries which cannot be accounted for, is not something small to ignore, especially when we are in a period where we are struggling to collect as much taxes as possible for purposes of the service delivery. And it's something that is cutting across. The National Dialogue Committee remember the other day, the issue on the cost of living as a very important aspect of their conversation, and I believe in the fullness of time, such issues, including what we've said about the harassment of our taxpayers by the Kenya Revenue Authority in a bid for them to achieve their target, should not and is not actually one of those things that we should experience at this point in time. Reason being, we understand the cost of living is very high. Kenyans are struggling to live within their means. Some are unable to do that which is very basic for them. And why? It's because the cost of living is high. When we get reports like what we are seeing in terms of the extent of the harassment, the taxpayer goes to achieve the target, that is not called for. It is one of those things that we should call out as leaders and say, however much you've been given a target, there is a process, there is a policy in place that should guide them in their collection of that money from the taxpayer. Because as we all say, if I am able to feel and see the benefit of the tax that I pay, no Kenyan wouldn't want to pay. Because you know what? You're paying for the services that you are enjoying as a Kenyan. And so it's high time we call upon the Kenya Revenue Authority in their bid to collect taxes, in their bid to collect the success, they should ensure that they do so with decorum so that Kenyans do not feel that they are being harassed.
All right. Let's hear from Association.
Yeah, thank you. First, on the statement of the controller of budget, that's a very serious allegation that should invite instant forensic action, and the necessary institutions like the Auditor General doing due diligence on the same, and of course the public investment committees of both the Senate and the National Assembly, because that is a serious allegation of loss of resources, particularly when people manipulate payrolls. If we allow a culture of manipulating operation systems of our finances in the country, then we'll be inviting and breeding agents of not corruption but stealing. That is open plunder and open stealing of resources. We may even have others occupying free education, free primary, free secondary education is also another form of transaction of money from Treasury through the ministry all through. And if we have people manipulating system, we'll have our money being stolen everywhere. And I think that is a matter that must be taken very seriously. The country should stop breathing and investigate on this. But looking at some of the allegations that the controller of budget made, she was even talking about revised rates for entry to game parks as going to scare away visitors. I also tended to think that a lot of exaggeration and exaggerated statements from the controller of budget, and that should be verified and nullified through a forensic audit and the work of the Auditor General. Then back to the taxation and how it even affects tourists. It is a known fact, and that we have established at the ministry, that many tourists from Europe have been shunning Kenya and shifting to other countries, ostensibly Tanzania and South Africa, for security reasons around two things: visa and how they are handled at immigrations. Those are facts, and we've discussed very openly. I'm happy CS Mutua talked about it the other day, that you cannot ransack bags of visitors and you keep checking all the small little items in the bags, and sometimes you even remove panties of some of the visitors and you expect them to come back again to Kenya after such treatment. I think the immigration department in this country should reform itself. Those of us who have traveled, I'm a global traveler, and I don't remember when my bag was opened. It was only opened once when I was in Turkey. And I don't remember any other entry, because I'm able to use the X-ray security check systems. I remember when I was in Australia, they were able to use dogs to check for drugs. And I think it is wrong for us to run an immigration system that is overzealous, that is harassing guests and checking every little item in the bags. That is not right. That should be changed, particularly when you know these are tourists coming to the country. That should be avoided. But then those doing business, coming with bags and bags, those can be dealt with differently by immigration. But this act of harassing visitors and harassing tourists, this one must be dealt with. And I'm sure, and I've seen this has been a big conversation, and the president has spoken about it. That's about immigration. Number two is the visa, security around visa, the conditions, the requirements. Now, we sometimes we get too overzealous about giving visas for those countries that require visas to get to Kenya. We must relax our visa requirements in this country. And I'm happy the president is working towards that.
Thank you.
That we must waive and have free visa for countries, particularly the Commonwealth and African countries, so that they can enter the country freely. Coupled now with the opening of the airspaces. So there are two things: relax the visa requirements and open the airspaces, and then deal with the rogue individuals at the immigration department. In that way, then tourism will be up and about, and is going to be a big industry in this country. We cannot lose tourists to Tanzania and South Africa when you can as well have all of them in Kenya.
Thank you, Wilson. We want to take a short break. When we circle back, we want to also interrogate this, of course, headlining story that was there last week with our legislators here, CEOs of states firms to join UDA politics. Ruling United Democratic Alliance opens a new era in Kenya's politics by giving chief executive officers of state corporations and board members the nod to contest elective party position. All right, what does the Constitution say regarding this? We shall be looking at this also with our panelists on the other side of a break as we look at party politics as well. Don't go away, you're watching Standpoint here on Morning Prime.